would like to welcome representatives of media, other partners, sponsors, and above all, our friends from the US Embassy and you, Ambassador Tracy. It is your first visit to Amsterdam, even though at different occasions you have had different meetings and encounters with members of the organization, but this is the first time that the whole membership gathers to welcome you in your first assignment to Armenia and as in your first assignment as the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to the Republic of Armenia. So welcome. AmCham is an organization that is in Armenian non-governmental sector for more than 25 years. It has been established back in 2000. We have now about 140 members of business community. And the range of membership ranges from big entities, big investors like Contour Global, Marriott, Coca-Cola, Big Four auditing companies, First Mortgage, other purely American, 100% American capital companies, and also members that have some American shareholding, have American affiliation, have interest in complying with the high standards of business operations, compliance, and becoming a part of Armenia, America business vector. AmCham has been traditionally very active in advocating the interests of its members, and the interests are pretty simple as any investor would have in a country so far away from its homeland. It's the actual protection of the investment, predictability of business environment, and opportunities for continuing business growth. And in Armenia, companies like members of like the ones that AmCham represents have been traditionally successful in achieving those objectives. Every company comes here with its own investment model, and in majority they strive to realize it, and they do everything possible to achieve both the investment objectives and also contribute to the development of the country that they work in. So today, more than ever, I think, AmCham is becoming very active, partnering with its close friends in the government of Armenia and also colleagues and friends in other areas of economic and political sectors to achieve business expansion and to find opportunities to sustain their businesses and growth. And from that perspective, it is very important for us to follow what tendencies and potential carries in itself U.S.-American relations. America is the biggest economy in the world, obviously provides opportunities for all investors. So businesses always look for opportunities to bilaterally developing these ties. Every year, traditionally, we ask the US Embassy and also your predecessor, yourself, to come to AmCham and speak about those priorities to us, so that we know where do we stand and where Armenia stands in US-American political and economic development side. And today is that day. We are very grateful to you to continuing this tradition and coming to AmCham and delivering your policy objectives. So we'll be listening to that very carefully, and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. And then we'll also have an informal opportunity to informally communicate to you and with our partners in the government. So without taking it too long, I would like to invite you to take the floor and proceed with the speech.
Hovsepian, Executive Director Sarkisian, members of the board, ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. I particularly want to thank the AmCham for hosting this event. I am honored to be representing the United States of America here in Armenia, and I've been keeping very busy during my first 2.5 months here. I think I've now met with every minister, as well as many other representatives from across the Armenian government and parliament. I've also met with civil society groups, students, and members of this chamber. These meetings have helped me understand firsthand the incredible breadth of our bilateral relationship. Just last week, our two governments recommitted to strengthening that relationship during the U.S.-Armenia Strategic Dialogue here in Yerevan. Foreign Minister Manatsakanian hosted a high-level U.S. delegation with representation from the U.S. Agency for International Development and the Department of Commerce, as well as several bureaus from the State Department. Our talks focused on how we could deepen our cooperation on a range of issues, from global and regional security to promoting mutual prosperity, and from law enforcement to assistance in support of democratic reforms. We had a positive agenda, focused on opportunities, but also addressed the challenges. Following the strategic dialogue, we were pleased to sign assistance agreements of up to $16 million. We also launched a new USAID initiative to support Armenia's democratic reform agenda. We will develop the details of this initiative in consultation with stakeholders, but broadly speaking, we intend to offer technical assistance to the government, promote economic empowerment and community development, facilitate small-scale infrastructure and service delivery improvements, and strengthen information campaigns on Armenia's reform and development process. But that's not all. During last week's dialogue, we showed our commitment to assisting in the development of a transparent, fair, and independent criminal justice system by dedicating the American-Armenian Friendship Hallway in Armenia's Justice Academy. We also committed to expanding English language training for Armenian students and teachers, and agreed to establish a master's degree program in American Studies at an Armenian university. I am very pleased with the fruitful and frank discussions between our delegations last week, and I am proud that our dialogue resulted in a number of tangible outcomes. Of course, the question now is, how do we continue to build up this dialogue? Since my arrival, I have often been asked about my plan, what I hope to accomplish as U.S. Ambassador to Armenia. And the short answer is this. It is my job to represent the interests of the United States in Armenia, and it is in our interest to support the development of a sovereign, democratic nation, and that is my highest priority with Armenia. The fact of the matter is, the United States has supported democratic processes and institutions in Armenia for the last 27 years, ever since we officially established diplomatic relations. That priority has been consistent. What has changed is Armenia itself. I don't need to tell you that democracy in Armenia is stronger than ever. And as the events of last spring showed us, change starts with and is driven by Armenians. It was the people of Armenia who flooded the streets last April. It was Armenians across the country who stood up and demanded the right to live in a free and democratic country. The right to live in a country where government, civil society, and businesses work together in a free, fair, and transparent manner to create a more prosperous future for all. And while I am proud that the United States was the first foreign country to provide elections assistance after the events of last spring, it was the people of Armenia who exercised their right to vote in a free and fair democratic election last December. I plan to continue the support to the Armenian people as they make choices to develop and solidify their democracy in a way that bolsters the rule of law and protects human dignity. I have spent the last few months in listening mode because I wanted to hear the voices of Armenians and the future they envision for their country. I wanted to learn about Armenia's priorities so I could determine how the United States can best capitalize on our shared values to ensure a mutually beneficial path forward. I am especially encouraged by the government's efforts to root out corruption and promote transparency. This will help level the playing field and signal to the international community that Armenia is a country that respects the rule of law and is open for business. This is particularly important given the strong potential for an improved U.S.-Armenian economic relationship. A stronger trade and investment relationship will support our mutual desire to secure sustainable and inclusive growth, achieve greater economic diversification, and foster competition and innovation. And of course, innovative, dynamic business leaders and entrepreneurs contribute their expertise to help grow the domestic economy and compete internationally. We can point to several recent successful developments in these areas. Over the past few years, we have witnessed sustained U.S. business interest in the Armenian market. Hydroelectric, IT, finance, retail, and agricultural sectors. This includes Contour Global's purchase of the Voratan Cascade hydropower plant, a deal involving $250 million worth of investment. It also includes the work of our Overseas Private Investment Corporation, OPIC, which has recently provided 3 loans worth $20 million to the First Mortgage Company, the first private residential mortgage finance company in Armenia. OPIC has also supported the expansion into Armenia of the Gazelle Fund, an investment fund that provides business advice to small and growing Armenian enterprises, and provides the financing they need to expand their businesses and create jobs. But there is still a great deal of untapped potential in our economic relationship. Armenia's strong economic growth in recent years, over 7% in 2017 and over 5% in 2018, demonstrates the potential for ongoing robust growth, but only if the business environment is conducive to sustained economic activity, investment, and innovation. Businesses are looking for Armenia to continue its efforts to create a fair, predictable, and transparent investment climate. We look forward to seeing the Armenian government pursue serious reforms that eliminate corruption, strengthen institutions, and bolster the rule of law. For our part, the U.S. Embassy will continue to engage the Armenian government and private sector as we pursue business facilitation efforts and demonstrate the very best of what U.S. companies have to offer. Their world-class technology, unrivaled know-how, and highest standards of business culture. We engage with U.S. companies every day as they look to Armenia as a destination for making their new investments and expanding their operations. We will continue to support them as they seek out new partners here, and we will advocate on their behalf where appropriate as we deepen our trade and investment relationship. Investment and innovation in the IT and STEM fields as a means to drive economic development is just one of the many shared values between our countries. Armenia stands out on the world stage for its deep stock of human capital. The Armenian people are known as innovators and visionaries in numerous fields. Of course, maintaining this prized position requires constant attention and effort, and I have every confidence Armenia is up to the challenge. I recently attended my first hackathon. I'm a little ashamed to admit it took me this long to get to a hackathon, but it was a remarkable, innovative concept where teams of technologically minded young people get together to solve pressing problems facing their country. For me, it was the perfect example of government, civil society, and young people and how they work together constructively to improve government transparency, accountability and efficiency, and the effective, innovative use of technology. I was proud that the U.S. Embassy was behind this initiative and that we could offer small seed money to the winners to develop the projects they dreamed up at the hackathon. One group came up with a prototype of an electronic mechanism to improve irrigation systems, a project that would ensure more effective use of scarce water resources and support Armenia's critically important agricultural sector. Again, the government cannot carry out all the needed reforms on its own. In a democracy, it needs help from the people. It needs vibrant and robust partnerships among all sectors of society. One constant refrain I hear in my conversations with Armenians about the economy is that economic development outside of Yerevan is vital to Armenia's overall economic success. I believe I've already met Armenians from all over the country who are innovative, motivated, and eager to contribute to their country's prosperity. And that motivation needs to be nurtured, especially when those ambitions are coming from young people, the future of this country. We must do all we can to keep them in Armenia and to empower them to achieve their dreams. One young woman I met during a recent trip to Gyumri is doing just that. Gayane Gandelian is spearheading the development of Armenia's IT sector as Chief Operating Officer of the software development company Digital Pomegranate. Her work is directly tackling the challenge of attracting talent to Gyumri. The embassy is committed to supporting leaders like Ms. Gandelian in their efforts to drive economic recovery and development in Gyumri and in other regions of Armenia. But it is important for local and national government to also work to create the necessary conditions to recruit and retain talent outside of Yerevan. It would be a shame to overlook the tremendous talent and potential contributions of all Armenians from all over the country. The United States has shown our commitment to regional development in Armenia through our assistance programs. Through collaboration with our Armenian partners, these programs help this country grow as a sovereign and democratic state. Since 1992, the U.S. government has provided more than $2 billion in assistance funding to improve the lives of the Armenian people, supporting their efforts to strengthen democratic, economic, and social governance. And in 2018, the United States provided $26.7 million in assistance funding to Armenia. But this does not tell the whole story, since so many of our assistance projects span multiple years, and right now, the total value of all of our active USAID grants and contracts in Armenia is $66 million. Now that I've thrown a bunch of numbers at you, let me explain what all this funding does. The goal is to help develop a more engaged, prosperous, and well-governed Armenian society through Armenian-led reforms and initiatives. 50% of our assistance is programmed through the government of Armenia and local organizations. This strategy means projects are more cost-effective, more sustainable, and more relevant to local populations because they start with Armenians. And the impact of this assistance extends far beyond the immediate beneficiaries. It is a catalyst for additional investment, which will drive inclusive and sustainable economic growth and create a brighter future for Armenians. For example, I recently had the opportunity to participate in the launch of the USAID-funded Rural Economic Development New Economic Opportunities Program to support Armenia's critical agricultural sector by helping to improve the performance of rural businesses and their ability to meet quality standards. This project will benefit at least 100 rural businesses in at least 60 rural communities over the next 5 years, creating economic opportunity all over Armenia. This is just one example of the many positive outcomes of our bilateral relationship. Of course, like in any relationship, we do not agree on everything, and that's okay. The important thing is that we have open lines of communication on all issues, even the more challenging ones. Open and honest dialogue between friends ensures that our relationship will continue to progress. Progress, in our view, means strengthening Armenia's democratic institutions, which will drive economic development and opportunity, which in turn ensures Armenia's sovereignty and security, giving you the freedom to make your own choices, including choosing to move toward further integration with the West. Armenia has already shown its commitment to partnering with the United States in the international arena in many ways. For instance, we value Armenia's work with NATO in the Partnership for Peace, including your participation in NATO missions, such as the Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan. Armenia is a solid partner with the U.S.-European Command, promoting regional stability in Kosovo, and Armenia's strong partnership with the state of Kansas and the Kansas National Guard has resulted in 15 years of fruitful exchanges that have brought our countries closer together. Of course, we recognize that our relationship does not exist in a vacuum. We understand and appreciate that Armenia has a plethora of bilateral and multilateral and international relationships, and as a sovereign, democratic country, makes choices according to its own national interest. We also understand that as a reality of geography and history, Armenia maintains strong ties to Russia. But I think most Armenians agree with me that the Armenian-Russia relationship should not and does not preclude Armenia from also pursuing strong, mutually beneficial relations with the United States, the European Union, and other potential partners. And while Armenia's geography and history link it to Russia, your values connect you to the West. These relationships are not mutually exclusive. Foreign affairs is not a zero-sum game. So just as we seek to strengthen coordination and cooperation with our European allies, we will continue to work with Russia on issues of common interest, including working together toward a resolution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict under the auspices of the OSCE Minsk Group format. Today, I am more encouraged than ever with the Minsk Group process. It has been a long road and there are no easy solutions, but the events of recent months have led me to believe that progress is possible. High-level meetings between the sides, a reduction in violence and tensions, agreement on next steps, and a commitment to continued dialogue show that progress is not out of the realm of possibility. And I am hearing from Armenians, especially young Armenians, that they are ready for progress. It is because of this enthusiasm and great potential of this generation of Armenians that the U.S. Embassy remains committed to investing in the youth of Armenia. Some of you may have seen my introductory video that outlined a few key U.S. policy priorities. I met a young woman named Yeva. She's an alumna of our Flex Exchange program for high school students. Yeva is a perfect example of why we invest in these programs. We are investing in Armenia's human potential, men and women. Yeva is committed to her country and was proud to return to Armenia and use her U.S. experience to better herself and create opportunities for others. The Embassy will continue to invest in programs like these that broaden horizons and build human potential through experience in the United States. The good news in Armenia is, of course, as I have mentioned, the motivation to continue to drive change in society is alive and well. As I have seen repeatedly in my brief time in Armenia, Armenians are invested and engaged in improving their future. They already know that change starts at home. Solidification of democratic gains that have been achieved in the last year depends on Armenians. But I pledge to you that the United States is here as your friend and partner to support you as Armenia continues to move forward, develop its democracy, strengthen its economy, and build space for peace and prosperity. Thank you. Shnora Kalutsi.
Thank you, Ambassador Tracy. And now, dear guests, you're free for a Q&A session, and please give your questions to the ambassador. Thank you. Any questions?
The first one's always the hardest. solved everything.
Yeah, probably you covered.
Thank you, Ambassador. My name is Diana. I represent HSBC Bank Armenia and I'm on MCAM board. So you have touched upon geopolitical situation and you've touched Russia. So I would like you to expand a little bit on US-Iranian relations and how does Armenia fall within the vector of these relations?
Armenian-Iranian relations?
US-Iranian.
US-Iranian.
And how does Armenia fit into the whole picture?
Well, I don't think it's any surprise to this audience, who I'm sure is following international developments, that the United States has been very concerned about the destabilizing activities that we see emanating from the Iranian government, support for a campaign of terrorism and assassinations, including in European capitals. That is of great concern to us. And so the United States, with partners, have been maintaining a campaign of pressure on very specific entities that act on behalf of the Iranian government in support of those destabilizing activities. But those are very targeted and focused actions. With respect to Armenian and Iranian relations, we understand that this open border is a very important border for Armenia and for its trade and security relationships. What we are asking is not that Armenia cut off its trade with Iran. We have no interest in interfering with legitimate trade between this nation and a very important neighbor. But we are asking all of our international partners to join with us in opposing behavior in countries near and far, as I said, particularly in European capitals, that is destabilizing and that is not consistent with what we expect from a government that wants to be a part of the international community.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me lighten up the mood a little bit. I want to take you up on that topic that we had the opportunity to discuss during the visit of the American delegation to Armenia about bird watching. It's just one example, but it would be wonderful to see how our United States and Armenia could expand in cooperation in environment, but also potentially in ecotourism. As I had a chance and opportunity to explain to the colleagues in State Department, we have a fascinating biodiversity and incredible potential destination for tourists. One such area is certainly bird watching. And I want to take you up on the offer about your mother being an avid bird watcher and invite her to Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to report. Thank you, and I'm going to report to my mother that the pressure is growing for her to visit. But I'm very glad that you mentioned this discussion, because I think it does bring us back to an area where the United States is working, particularly our U.S. Agency for Aid and International Development. One focus that we have in our economic assistance programming is in helping develop tourism and looking at how we connect issues, environmental issues, to that tourism development, as well as the many wonderful agricultural products that Armenia has to offer. I think some of the best dried fruits that I've had are right here in Armenia, and those are local businesses that are producing them. So, this is where we see potential growth for Armenia. It's not the only place, but it does bring me back to the point that I made about the importance of all players pulling together. I think we have some very smart, capable entrepreneurs who are ready and willing to take some risks in investing and creating bed and breakfasts, of developing touring agencies, but they also depend on local governments to help make sure that other conditions are there that are attractive to tourists. Good roads and other kinds of infrastructure that are important. So, we'll be looking in every way possible as to how we can continue to promote Armenia as an ecotourism destination. I think you can count on me to help do that. But we'll want to do that with our Armenian partners.
Սեդրակ Ասատրյան կոնցերն դիալոգ փաստաբանական ընկերության տնօրեն։ Ձեր կառավարությունը լավ ու բարի ժամանակներում ծրագրեր իրականացնում նաև շատ տարբեր ծրագրերի իրավաբանների համար։ Ինքս 10 տարի առաջ դրանից մեկով մասնակցել եմ Ամերիկայում։
Pause for interpretation.
Ես ուղղակի ուզում եմ հետաքրքրվել վերջերս նման ծրագրերը պակասել են, նկատի ունեմ ձեր եռանդուն ծրագրերի հետ կապված ցանկությունները, կուզեի հասկանալ նոր ծրագրերի իրավաբանների համար, երիտասարդ իրավաբանների համար լինելու են, թե ոչ, շնորհակալություն։
That's a very good question. What I would like to tell you is that this is, I think, a very important area for us, the work with the law enforcement community and the broader justice sector, and that includes lawyers. And what we're focused on in this sector, and I'm very pleased that the Minister of Justice is with us here today, but it is about, in many respects, building capacity. We're working very closely with the Ministry of Justice, the Prosecutor General's Office, the police, and within that community there are lawyers. And as I said, we're just in some respects taking off and starting to develop new programming, and I am sure that that programming will include and has been including lawyers. We look forward to good ideas if there are ones that people see that where there's a gap that we're not meeting, maybe perhaps a need. But in general, this question of a healthy, accountable justice system is a very important one. It's important to Armenians. I think it's important to the business community. It brings us back to this question of business and how to help develop economic growth. I mean, whether you're an Armenian business or whether you're an international investor, what you really care about is looking for a healthy, functioning judicial decision-making system that provides a sense of fairness, predictability, and transparency. And lawyers are a very, very important part of this. But there are other dimensions, and so we're looking forward to working with all parts and partnering with Armenian government and outside of Armenian government to help do what we can to strengthen the judicial system.
Thank you, Ambassador. I am Alevi Ganapiosyan, Deputy Minister for Education and Science. I am very much excited to learn that the possibility of having an MA program on American Studies is ready to fly. I've been one of the first to draft the concept on this thing, and it's extremely, before joining the ministry, and it's extremely exciting to know that there is the possibility for this. You did mention about one program that we are very effectively collaborating, which is Flex program, and we do have some other collaborations, but I'm wondering about the untapped opportunities to collaborate in higher education. So I wonder, do you see there is a possibility of establishing any framework for collaboration between the higher education institutions in Armenia and the flagship universities in the States, especially in the area of research and development? Thank you.
Well, Thank you. I'm very glad you mentioned that aspect of higher education. And let me just flag that I didn't enumerate all of the areas that we work with in programs. And in higher education, we have a number of exchange programs. We have the Fulbright program, we have the Humphrey program, the Muskie program. But I think what you're getting at is the formal connections between universities. And typically what the United States does when it comes to those sorts of ties and arrangements is we try to help our university system connect directly with the host country's university system. We think that that's one of the most effective ways that partnering can happen. We try not to get in the way. We try to do some matchmaking and promoting of those ties and connections. And I'm aware, just in the short time that I've been here, that we already, I think, have some of those partnerships. But where we see potential for more matchmaking, we'll be certainly looking to do that.
Ambassador, a week ago, AmCham signed a partnership agreement with Ministry of Economic Development on some on how to promote the small and medium enterprise development in Armenia, but also broadly, like on issues like intellectual property rights protection. And I think there is a huge potential between Armenia and the US to cooperate on IPR. So from that perspective, do you think it's possible that the American government or any other institutions from the US can help or support Armenia in actually enforcing some of the IPR rules and laws? Because we have got, I think, some very good legislation on IPR, but the enforcement is not good, and this is of concern of business community at large.
I think this is a place where we would be very happy to expand beyond what we are already doing in our cooperation with law enforcement. We have the ability to bring training to help in drafting legislation, tweaking legislation. I think what's important too, though, is for us to hear from the business community, to continue hearing from the business community about how we can best target some of those trainings or assistance, particularly if you see particular areas that maybe are not being addressed that are important to your businesses. I think we depend on that sort of advice, but from the U.S. perspective, and this is not just the case with Armenia, intellectual property protection is a very important issue for us. We just noted the World Intellectual Property Protection Day in April, and I was struck in attending an event that was hosted locally on that issue with the awareness that's here, the desire to try to do more on intellectual property protection. So yes, let us know what more we can do. And Chris Ellis, our economic and commercial officer, will be very happy to follow up.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Greetings again. My name is Avak Avanesyan. I'm the Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Investments. Just to follow up on this issue, intellectual property indeed is one of the most important areas of cooperation between US and Armenia. The distance between our countries makes trade in services and the investment main areas of our economic cooperation. Now, from that point of view, the government is strongly committed to not only enforcing but also educating all of the users and beneficiaries of intellectual property in the Republic of Armenia, and it is indeed an area of strong cooperation between United States and Republic of Armenia. I believe that we'll have some direct points of cooperation in the TIFA frameworks that we're working on right now. But regarding other things, we'd also really like the US support for Armenian creative industries to make better sense of regulations on intellectual property, not only in Armenia but also in the US, to enforce and enhance these trade relations in trading services between our two countries. So please, if you could work with us on this more actively, that would be greatly encouraged. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And one of the things that I heard about at the event that I attended last April, this past April, was that trademark protection is as I understood it, fairly well protected. That the areas of concern are in how to protect the creative processes. Some of the examples I heard were had to do with in filmmaking, songwriting, and so again, we have people at our embassy who I think are ready to take good ideas of how we can do more, because it is important. I mean, when people put that investment, that personal investment into the creative process, and then see that they're not reaping the rewards of their abilities, that's a real discouragement, and it drives talent away. So, and that I think is the opposite of what we want to see happen here.
Thank you, Ambassador. Vahid Saidyan, Managing Partner at Video in Armenia, an audit accounting firm. My question is about tax treaty. Armenia have signed an agreement on avoidance of double taxation with 46 countries, but not yet with United States. So where do we stand in this regard? And what's your opinion, how important this kind of agreement might be for investors and in general for expanding economic relations? Thank you.
This is an issue that I have raised with the Treasury Department, which has the lead on this issue, and I know that the Armenian Embassy in Washington has also been very, I think, persistently pursuing the possibility of a double taxation treaty at Treasury. But I also understand from my Treasury colleagues, this is not a quick and easy process. The treaty process in the United States is a very intensive process. And so what I see in the short and medium term is the importance of looking at ways to develop other sorts of regulations or creating the kind of environment that in other ways is favorable to business. I don't think a double taxation treaty is the only way for a country to attract investment. And so I think what is important, even if a taxation treaty was to succeed, as I said, when you look at the treaty process, it takes quite some time. So my advice and where we're working at the embassy is, what are the other things that we can do to help ensure that businesses, particularly international investors, have as few obstacles as possible in getting into the market. And if they're interested, if they see an opportunity, that there's ease of doing business here, that they have access, and that again, when they if there's a dispute, that they see the kind of decision making that is fair and transparent and predictable, that gives them confidence that their investment is not going to be wasted.
Karen Martiosyan, Avenue Consulting Group. It's not secret that after our political changes here in Armenia, our government seeks for cooperation and broad and healthy investments from our partner countries like USA, European Union, Russia, China, etc. Do you have any plans or ideas how to foster private sector direct investment from USA to Armenia, especially to engage US capital in our infrastructure projects here in Armenia? Thank you.
Well, this is precisely one of the topics that we had under discussion last week in the U.S. Strategic Dialogue. We had a representative from the Commerce Department who is very experienced in this part of the world, who was providing suggestions to our Armenian counterparts about areas in the economy that might be attractive to investment. And I think what's also important is to look at institutions such as OPIC, which I mentioned in my remarks, where I think there's some real possibilities in terms of financing. There's been some recent legislation that has eased some of the conditions on making available the financing. So the United States has some possibilities for investors in the United States to take advantage. I think the other side of the equation, though, is really for the Armenian government to put together a strong campaign to highlight and profile, not just here in Armenia, but in key places where investors can be found, of what the opportunities are here. So it's again, I think it's a partnership. The United States is a place of tremendous entrepreneurship, where there are always investors looking for opportunities, but sometimes they have to be shown the way a little bit, and I think that's where the Armenian government comes in and can help do that. And as I said, that's part of what we were talking about last week in our strategic dialogue.
More questions? Since no more questions. Thank you very much, Ambassador Tracy.